Welcome back to another episode of Catching Up with Christians, and I'm your host, Coach McCarty, alongside my brother-in-law. Actually, now it hasn't been too long for that title, right? And but super happy that I can call you brother-in-law, Mike Kinkenon. Mike is been in my life for a long time now, but like I said, it's been just recently was officially a part of the family, which has been an amazing time, and so I'd love for you to introduce yourself, Mike, and kind of what you do and how you got there.
For sure. I've been in your life longer than you realized. We can talk about that later, but
Yeah,
yeah, Mike Kinkenon from Las Vegas, Nevada. I've been very thankful for all the opportunities I've got. Baseball's been a part of my life pretty much forever. Right now, I am currently coaching the Las Vegas Recruits, 9U specifically. I do private lessons, and then I teach at fifth grade at Faith Lutheran Academy. And Faith Lutheran's been a big part of my life, which I'm sure we'll get to a little bit later on. But thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, you touched up on some great things. So first off, talk about how we know each other. We're family now. I'll kind of talk about my perspective here quick about this is a long time ago. You talk about you've been in my life a lot longer than I realized. It has been like what 8 years, or is that off?
Yeah, no, Megan and I are approaching 8 years together.
Yes, yes.
So a
Hey,
little
I
bit
was right.
of that. So yeah,
That's awesome. So, I've seen Mike growing up around the ball field. When he was coaching the Las Vegas Recruits, my dad and I used to coach club ball. And I knew the name to the face, but obviously, until him and my sister, were in a relationship, we got to know each other. But I won't forget that first time ever
yeah,
Meg telling me that you guys, were talking and it was getting serious in those things, and I don't know, maybe 6 months to a year, whatever it was, and not too sure the exact timeline, but you couldn't make it up. We played my dad's team played your team,
yep,
and that weekend before, and she told us on like a Monday we were playing a weekend tournament, and y'all beat the brakes off of us. It was
yeah.
15-0. I think you had like was it Zane and like
That
George.
was that was that group. Yep, yep.
They were electric, man. I don't know who it was. The lefty was on the mound, shoved and throwing gas at that age, and just absolutely wrecked us. And I was like, cool, okay, like this guy, he's got a good team. But I really admired your character and the team's, their sportsmanship, right? I think that's a word that I don't not a big fan of because everybody thinks like, oh, gotta everybody deserves a trophy and all that stuff. But that's not what I mean by sportsmanship. I just mean even though when you're beating a team by a good amount, you still hang your head high. You still
Yes,
are, you know, giving respect to the other team, and especially even on the coaching side of things, right? There's some coaches when you beat them by a lot, they aren't the most, nice after the game. They'll kind of look down at you, right?
yeah,
So I definitely respected that because you guys, the Las Vegas Recruits, if the listeners don't know, it's a very well ran organization here in Las Vegas, known for taking care of business on and off the field. So knowing that it's a class act organization, but also an organization that is successful, is a great thing. But anyway, so I remember, that next day going into a Monday after the tournament, she's like, yeah, I met this guy, he's great, all this, and he actually coaches club ball. He's ever heard of a team called LVR? And I was like, yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
she goes,
We do.
yeah, we do. And she goes, yeah, he actually coaches like 14U. And I'm like, really? We just played them last weekend. She's like, oh, yeah. Like, if anybody knows my sister Meg, I love her to death, but sometimes she doesn't always put two to two together, And
Take
so
a second sometimes, but we love her.
we do. We love her to death. I love Meg. And she's like, oh, yeah, you guys do coach 14U. I was like, yep. And they beat us. And, fast forward. And I was like, man, we've seen them a long time. And, that was a really kind of my first, introduction of knowing of you and that you guys were together and that type of stuff. And then fast forward, I want to say a couple months after that, you came over for like a dinner or lunch or something. We
Yeah,
played a little MLB The Show.
I don't know what else we would have eaten. Cafeteria, just super appropriate dinner.
Yes, yes. and played some show, played a little bit of the show. That's when the rivalry started.
Yeah.
You beat me up with the Cardinals a little bit,
Yeah.
but
I had to hold my own because all I heard was how good you were. I was like, I better not mess up. And I remember walking out of your room and I was like, Megs, he's gonna be mad. And you're like, you she was like, you won? I was like, yeah, I won. So that was when
that's awesome.
I think I gained your respect more off the field. I could compete with you in the show.
There
So
we go. You're right, man. So that's kind of my perspective. How would you kind of see on your end, maybe just kind of meeting the family, maybe meeting me? Like, what was that whole, thing
yeah.
like?
Well, you talk about like sportsmanship and stuff, and it is a word. And I think like one thing I've learned about your family, our family, I guess is the approach to everything. We could talk specifically baseball, but it's like, are you respecting the game of baseball? Are you
Mhm,
respecting, people? Are you, and those
mhm,
are just things that we've been instilled from our parents,
mhm,
of how we act. And, I think you're on the same page as me as it's like, now it's our job to carry that
for
sense
sure.
of respect and sportsmanship and teaching people how to do things the right way. Um, but yeah, I will never forget that dinner. That was at the Pyramid House too.
Yes, it was. It
So I
was.
remember, I remember going in, and I just remember, I think the thing I remember the most was Meg's face when she realized, like, wait, you guys know each other? Or like, oh yeah, like we were just at the field together. But again, it goes back to you know you and your dad being out there, and I
Mhm,
think it says a lot, about people that take the time that don't have kids,
mhm.
on a team to coach. And there's
Yeah,
nothing wrong if they do. I think it's great that parents take the time to do that,
yeah.
or wear that coach's hat as well. But I think it says a lot when people take time when they have no real affiliation
Mhm,
with a sport or anything.
for sure.
They just do it out of the goodness of their heart. They're passionate about it and they want to try to make a difference. So I learned, that's a super important thing for you. Look where
Yep,
we're at right now. Trying to
yep.
do the same thing just through a different way. So
Absolutely. No, that's a great way to, think about it, and I love the way that you put that, and I definitely agree, and I think that's how we bonded so early on
yeah,
with the respect and the love of the game, and just a lot of our morals aligned, obviously, because we're family. So, um, I knew that going in, and which is a huge thing for me. So that's kind of to give everybody, the listeners, that's kind of the background a little bit, and um they got married last year. It was a great wedding,
yep. Almost
and
a year now. We're
almost a
close
year.
in a year, March 11th. So it's
There
been
you go, man. That was an incredible time. It
yeah,
was amazing, and I got to see a bunch of awesome friends and family, and I ended up I always joke around with them. I said I love them so much. I missed 4 games that season to get that wedding,
yep,
and us baseball coaches, and even Mike understands, like, when you're sacrificing at Division 3 level, that's 10% of your games because we only played 40 games. But
yep.
of course, I would have never missed it. But I always tell people it's like that's how much I really love these people. You know what I mean? That I missed 10% of my career for that of that season. But I'm definitely it was an amazing time, and I wouldn't have ever missed it. And it was so fun and things like that. And like
That
I said,
and that goes with like something, my dad taught me growing up, was, your priorities in life. And I,
mm,
I even teach my fifth graders this. I teach the kids I coach, 9-year-olds, you
hmm
know, there's your priorities. Like your number one is your faith.
hmm
Number two is your family. Number three is your job.
yep,
My dad always said school for us, when you're
yep,
growing up,
yep,
school's your priority, faith, family, school, and then baseball,
yep.
or your hobby, whatever else it is you do. And it's like, I'm a really big believer, especially as I've grown up, like when those things get out of order,
Mm,
it makes life hard.
mm,
And it makes, whatever you're doing tougher, and it makes it not necessarily worth it. And so, that's a great example of doing those things. And sometimes, yeah, it means you have to make hard decisions, but I truly believe like if you stick to that faith, family, your job in baseball, you make your decisions in that order, and like you'll be set. As tough as it might be, I don't think you can look back and question whether or not you made the right decision. And that's something that I've done my whole life, ever since my dad taught me that.
that's incredible, and that's a great way to look at it. And I think sometimes it can be tough, as a human or someone who's got a lot of things going on. You try to you as you get older and become an adult, you realize you can't do everything,
Yeah.
right? You have to prioritize things in life. Like, as like someone who loves to help, for me, it's like I love helping in so many people, but it's like I can only fit so much in my basket, right? And then when
Yep.
you gotta prioritize things and that's a great way to put it. And it's so much of what my dad taught us too, right? It's just kind of, like you said, prioritizing the things that matter in your life and attacking those 110% of your effort, right? Like not, doing 50% of your capabilities, give everything you can.
Yeah.
And that's why, you've been able to be successful, and that's why, you're being able to be where you are. So let's talk a little bit about your career as far as your teaching. Real quick, Faith Lutheran is a faith-based school, correct? And
Yep.
that's pretty cool in itself, but you teach elementary, that's a
Yeah.
lot better than I could, man. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
So teaching wise, yeah. So um, once I finished playing, I decided to stay up in Portland, and my coach, Lewis and Clark, Tom Flynn, uh, he reached out and was like, "Kink, can you come meet with me?" And anytime you called to the coach's office, whether you have a great relationship with him or not, which I did, and Coach Flynn was at my wedding, and he called me in and he was like, what are your plans after graduation? And I had no clue. I had zero clue. Um, and he was like, "Well, would you ever consider coaching?"
Mm,
And I had some time in my 4 years where I was still able to kind of, I don't want to say be a player coach, but
yeah.
I was hurt. I missed
Mm,
quite a bit of time. My junior year, I tore a ligament in my wrist. I think I missed almost 30 games. It
mm,
was pretty early in the season, and so I couldn't do anything. And so, I kind of was able to take a back seat, as a
mm,
player and be in that kind of help model, with the players and, especially catchers. We had an underclassman that was going to get quite a bit more time. And so I enjoyed it, and then I'd always kind of dabbled in it. And so I was like, oh yeah, like that would be pretty cool. He's like, would you want to coach here? Coach with me? And I was like, absolutely. I loved being at Lewis and Clark. Portland's a great city. It was a good place to be. And so I got into coaching college for a year, graduated, and I quickly learned like this is awesome. This
mm.
is something I love to do. Summertime recruiting trips, I loved it.
Yep.
Recruiting trips.
Yeah.
I gotta meet a lot of cool coaches
Mhm.
and just get so much information from people. There is so much information out there, and it was something that took me a while to understand. Like as a coach, you have to be able to take in information and be
Mm.
okay with not knowing and then adapting. How
Yep.
can I convey that? And so learned a lot, met a lot of really good people, coaching. And then the season kind of, then we get back on campus for the fall, and then recruiting kicked up. And to me that was, and I think a big point in my life was I realized like I'm not as passionate about the recruiting aspect
Mm,
as I had thought I would be.
mm.
And season went around and it was good. I enjoyed the baseball side of things, and then there's the recruiting side. There's a business side of things,
Oh, yeah.
in terms of managing, schedules, helping players with,
Hotels.
yeah, flights,
Yeah,
travel schedules. And so that was a lot for me,
for
coming right
sure.
out of college and trying to figure out what I wanted to do and even how to do it.
Mm,
Um, and it was really tough and it was really, really hard for me. And I remember Christmas time was kind of when I was struggling, and then I was like, season will be good. So then we go through the season and we were getting ready to ramp up recruiting again, and I was just like, I didn't love it.
mm.
And I know, especially with baseball or even sports, there's a chain of command, and you got to pay your time,
For
pay your
sure.
dues,
Yep.
earn. And then I respect that. I believe in it. I understand it. I get it. But it wasn't something I could see myself doing.
Mm,
And so, I talked with coach, and, he was bummed I was going to leave, but he totally understood. And so I
mhm.
decided to move back home, and still had no clue what I was going to do. And I just wanted to be home, being born and raised here. I love it here in Vegas. And so led to me going out, and I went and played slow pitch softball.
There
This
you
is how,
go.
yeah, so I played slow pitch softball, and I ran into my buddy, Dave Anderson,
Yep.
who's the head coach at Faith Lutheran. And Dave was my coach in the summer when he was in college, and I was still playing summer ball going into my senior year. So we had a great relationship and known Dave for a long, long time. And so he was like, "Hey, have you ever thought of, getting into coaching?" And I was like, "Yeah," kind of told him what I told you. And
Yeah.
he's like, "Well, would you want to come out and just help out with the catchers, just whenever you're feeling like it?" Okay. I didn't have anything going on. I literally just moved home trying to figure out what path I wanted to take. So I go out, and one day turned into 3, turned into 5, turned into, "Hey, I'll be back next week." And then it was like, "King, do you just want to coach here?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah." And so I took a job just being with JV, head
Yep.
coach at JV, and then coaching all the catchers.
Mm.
And then after that, Dave was like, "You ever thought of teaching?" And I was like, "No, never did." But it's literally the same thing. And I was that kid in high school where it's like so many people were like, "Oh, Kink, you're gonna coach baseball and you're gonna teach." And people look ahead now and be like, "Told you so." And so I started substitute teaching, working through all the teaching stuff I needed to do. And I was set. I was like, you know what? I'm going to eventually, I'm going to coach with Dave forever. If not, he gets another job, I'll take over at Faith, and I'm gonna teach at Faith, and that's where I went to school, 6th grade all the way through. I'm a Faith faithful,
And there you go.
and so I was like, it was awesome, it was everything I wanted. And then subbing was hard because I was picky. I'm gonna be honest. I only wanted to sub at Faith. I was spoiled. I
Okay.
know it. I knew a lot of people there though, right? And so they would just tell me, "Hey, I need a sub," but sometimes you go a month without getting a sub
For
call.
sure. Yeah.
And so so then I happened to go out to a Faith football game, and there was a lightning delay. And so we went across the street to the Pint and just waiting it out, hanging out, grabbing some food, drinks. And I end up seeing my old 6th grade teacher.
Okay.
And he had just coached the freshman team or JV team the day before. And so he was there just waiting for varsity. And I was like, "What's up, Mr. Cody?" And now he's the dean at Faith.
Okay.
But he was my 6th grade teacher, and I ended up meeting his wife. And so he's like, "Hey, I taught, telling her how we know each other." And it goes on to, she's like, "Oh, I understand that you're a substitute teacher. Have you ever thought of subbing elementary school?" And I was like, yeah. No, the answer was no. I had never thought, right? I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I was going to teach high school and go through. I didn't know what subject, but I knew I wanted to be around high school kids. And I was like, no. But when you're not subbing for a while,
You say yes.
you say yes, because I needed to, right? I needed
Yeah,
it. I needed some, and so I was like, sure. And so I gave her my phone number. I was like, reach out. I kid you not, the next week, she was like, "Hey, would you be interested in subbing 3rd through 5th PE?" And I was like, "Okay, PE, sure. We'll play dodgeball or whatever." And I go to the academy, Faith Academy. We just call it the academy, and I subbed, and it was chill. I didn't think anything of it. It wasn't, it was fun. It was good.
Yeah.
And so I end up working, coaching, going, and then it turns into, "Hey, there's an opportunity for you to sub long term." We have a lady that has to leave. She can't stay any longer because she was a substitute for a woman that was getting ready that had just had a kid, I believe, or was getting ready to. So they needed a sub for the sub. So I was that low, and it was it was 4th grade, and I was like, sure, how long? And if I remember correctly, it was 3 to 4 weeks. It was
Really?
it was a big chunk of time. And so I was like, let's do it. And I just went in, and it was tough. It was so different. It was something that, looking back, it was like, I don't know how I did it. I mean, I learned a lot from that experience. And so I remember when that finished, I was like, I think I can do this. I think I can teach this age. I think. I was still more comfortable with older kids, being able to work with them and coach and teach them. And I think I was comfortable with it. And that was the thing. I was comfortable. I didn't know if I was good, but I knew I was comfortable, right? And I think that's why I was not sure of myself.
Yeah.
And so it had gotten almost to the end of that school year, and this would have been 7 years ago now.
Yeah.
And the principal reached out and was like, "Hey, like, would you be interested in coming in and talking?" Not, it wasn't even an interview; it was just talking. And she was like, "We have an opportunity for a fifth grade job that's opening up. Is this something you would want to do?" And I was like, "I think so." And she was like, "Okay, well, how about you set up a lesson for this third grade class? And you're going to come in and you're going to teach a lesson and we're going to come watch you. And then depending on how that goes, you know, we'll see about whether or not
Yeah.
this is a fit." I'm like, "Okay, sounds good." So go in, I teach a lesson on the Hoover Dam. I'll never forget this. I sucked. And at this time, Meg and I were dating and we were,
Yeah.
and so I remember calling her after I got in the car. After, and I just taught one lesson. It was literally like 30 minutes. It was about the
Yeah.
Hoover Dam. They were doing like Nevada history. And I remember calling Meg and I was like, "I'm pretty sure I got fired and I didn't even have the job." And it was tough. Like I was so unsure,
Mm,
maybe even insecure is the right word,
for sure.
about how I did.
Mm.
And so I get a email from Diana, our principal. She was like, "Would you be interested in coming in for an interview?" I was like, "I must not have done that bad." I go in, have an interview, and we finish the interview. She's like, "All right, like we'll give you a call and let you know." And then like the next day, I got a phone call, and I was
Mm.
like, "We'd love to have you come teach fifth grade." And so I have been. This is my 6th year teaching fifth grade. I never, ever, ever would have thought that that was an option.
Mm.
More so, I didn't think I'd love it as much as I do. I
Mm.
can't imagine myself teaching another grade than
Wow.
fifth grade. And it's like I look back and like I said, use that word uncomfortable. It's like you got to do uncomfortable things sometimes because you
Absolutely.
just don't know. And I mean, it was the best decision I made in teaching. Coaching was saying yes to going and subbing and having that whole door open. I've had opportunities in the past. I'm no longer coaching at Faith.
Mhm.
Just I really enjoy coaching the 9-year-olds and being around the younger kids and helping them. And it's time. It was just time to move on. Nothing bad. I love that place, and we're gonna go to a game tomorrow, actually. So, but it
Is
was
there a
one of
tournament going on?
they got the border battle this
Yeah.
weekend. So, but no, it was one of those things. Like I look back and it's like it's okay to try something different. It's okay to think you're not gonna do well at it, but just
Mm.
try.
Mm.
And I mean, I can't imagine going. I had opportunities to move over to the middle school, high school,
Mm.
and really try to focus on getting in there and having an opportunity to really coach at the high school level
Mm.
for a long time, and because I ended up moving my way up with Dave,
For
um,
sure.
but I can't imagine teaching another grade. And then, the fact that I'm at Faith, so I didn't get to go to the elementary school. I didn't go K through 5. I just went to the middle school, so
Okay.
6th grade all the way through. But we are a feeder school. We do a lot of stuff with the middle school, high school, partner with them on a
Okay.
lot of stuff. So it's cool to be involved in the faith
Absolutely.
community. So
Dude, that's an incredible story. I think it's a testament to like God, like you from the story that you shared, right? It's like you also didn't put restrictions. Like you when you felt like, sure, I'm gonna try this, like you just went ahead and did it. Like
yeah,
even though there was some of that like maybe insecurity or doubt, like, oh, I don't know if I'm quite ready for it, but it didn't stop you from trying it. Like you still went, head to the wall, like just let's try it. And I think that's pretty, inspiring for people that are listening. Like even if you're in a season of not knowing or an uncomfortable season, if you feel like something's on your heart to just try it, there's no harm in that, right? There's no harm in like giving it a shot because you don't know where God's gonna take that. Like
yeah,
for from the way I take that story is like Mike went in with no real expectations, said sure, let me try this, and now just found a calling in a way that
yeah,
you really love what you're doing, and to the point now you're coaching younger guys because I'm sure
yeah,
it's even more fun. That now that you have the connection with the fifth grade age, and now you're doing, that stuff with the younger kids in baseball. I think it's powerful to show one, it didn't sound like you ever put limitations on what God could do for you, and then two, you're patient. You were able to go through this uncomfortable season and be like, all right, let's see what you got going on,
yeah.
and that's pretty powerful.
The turning point. I think I don't even know if I can say my life because that makes me feel really old. But was when I was in Portland.
Mm.
I remember around Christmas time being in my room. I had a roommate. I had a few roommates. We had a house.
Mhm.
Great people. And I remember it being around Christmas, and I was just looking back. You probably could say depressed. Like
Mm.
like
Mm.
being honest, looking back, I was not happy.
Mm.
Um, that was a time in my life when I truly can say, like, I don't think I've ever prayed
Mm.
more in my life than when I was just bummed. I don't have,
Mm.
I just remember being like, God, I need something. I need to
Mm.
do something. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm gonna do. But I knew I was unhappy. I knew it
Mm.
wasn't the right place, and it wasn't anything anyone had done. It wasn't what I felt like I was supposed to do with my
Mm.
life. And, you know, I think the hardest part for people, to figure out what they want to do and how they can do it and how you can, be successful
Mhm.
is going through those things that suck,
Yeah.
because we have a misconception. I feel like as people, it's like our lives are supposed to be a certain way. There,
Mm.
there's a path that we want to go on, and you have to follow that path.
Mm.
Whether it's been laid out for you in your mind by your family, whatever, or what you want to do. And
Mm.
it's like, I got news for you guys. You don't get to make that path.
Mm.
That's not something that you get to do.
Mm.
And the quicker you can accept that,
Yeah.
then the better. I truly think the better the blessings that there are, or
Mm.
even the opportunities. Because yeah, you're gonna do things that suck. You're gonna go through things that are not fun.
Mm.
But it's like you have to just understand. It's not our job to understand, and it's not our job to plan those things.
For sure.
You have to be patient, and you have to just trust it's going to happen.
Mm.
It's going to happen when God wants it to happen.
Mm.
In my class, we talk a lot. I have the privilege to teach religion. It's my favorite part of the day. I get off on tangents like this, and the kids are like, "Oh, Mr. K, we got to go. Time for PE." But it's like you got to understand when you pray, right?
Mm.
Like that's such a big part. And everyone thinks that you got to do it a certain way, this, that, or the other. It's
Mm.
it's just like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, just talking to God. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's like, one really hard thing for kids, and going off on a little tangent, but it's hard for them to understand. Like when you pray for something, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. It
Mm.
doesn't mean you're going to get what you want.
Mm.
I tell them God is not a genie. You
Yep.
don't get to ask him for things and he's going to give them to you.
Yep.
You know, Dear God, can I please get an A on this test? Well, just because you didn't study, probably not. Right? And it's hard for them to understand that,
Mm.
but I tell them God answers every prayer, every
Yep.
single prayer. It
Yep.
might not be in the time you want, it might
Mm.
not be what you want, but he will
Yep.
answer it.
Amen.
And I think people need to understand that for everyday stuff,
Mm.
because we all
Absolutely.
have our own things we're going through, but if you can just take a step back and really just like, hey, I can't really do anything with my situation other than try my hardest
Mm.
and trust that God has a plan, it'll work out.
Mm.
And
That's
I think
powerful.
and I think everybody can honestly take a second and like think of something like that, where it's like I could come up with tons of things,
100%.
that you just don't expect them, but God knows when it's right for you, and
For sure.
you just that's what faith is, right?
Mm.
That's literally the definition
Literally.
of faith, and
Yes.
and that's what's so hard for people to buy into and to
Mm.
understand. But when you do, it could change your life. And I think that's why I'm here, where I am.
Mm.
I'm so thankful for everything I have. And I think it's because you have to just know God has a plan and it's
Mm.
on His time.
Yep.
You try to put it on your terms. Fortunately, you're gonna lose that battle
Oh,
forever.
100 out of 100 times, you're
So
losing that one.
yes.
1000%. And that was some amazing words of wisdom. And but I think the two biggest takeaways is God will answer those prayers, and it's just, and the second thing is It just may not look like the way you want it to,
Yep.
or in the time frame that you want to,
Yep.
but it does not mean that he, didn't answer those prayers. And something I've really been big on in this season, and I put a little video out about this, guys, is like a little tangent here, short one, but basically, your current season's a past prayer. And I've said this a lot recently, and what I mean by that is you can find something in your current season of life. It's something that God answered in the past. Like, whether it's a job, whether it's a family member thing, you could have prayed a year ago about it, or it could be something you prayed about yesterday. But you're probably experiencing something in this current season of your life that you prayed for in the past. And I think
Mhm.
it's a great reminder to seek and also remind yourself of the, gratitude, right? To be appreciative in this moment because God is faithful and he has answered prayers then and he will again. And I think just remind ourselves to look into our current season and really look at it and nitpick and be like, man, I see him. He's been faithful here because I know I prayed about that 9 months ago or a year ago. And yeah, you waited 9 months or a year, but it was answered. It happened. And
Yep.
I know in my own life, like, there's been some amazing things that's happened recently that has just been answered prayers that just kind of remind me that he's still moving. So to anybody listening, like Mike said, it might not be your time, it might not be the way you want it, but he's still answering prayers. And we really just, my biggest recommendation is just to remind people to just remember your current season is a past prayer. There's something going on in your current season that I'm sure you prayed for in the past, and just remind you that God is faithful. So I know we talked about this a little offline. You talk a little bit about how faith is such a big place for you, faith, the school, and your faith. And what I mean by that is you've had, I'm sure opportunities. It's really easy to go to CCSD or those types of things, right? But one of the big reasons we talked about is that you love being able to be open and about your faith and be able to teach religion and those types of things. So, how does your faith and your, belief in God and Jesus affect, um, maybe your teaching style and also your coaching style?
Yeah. Well, I think kind of both in one, coaching and teaching. I think it's, the way I act is just I try to tell people, like, being a Christian is tough.
Mm,
Okay. And it's not easy in terms of what people think of you or the decisions that you make.
mm,
Um, you don't have to be in everyone's face about God. I think that you are a reflection of Jesus Christ.
mm,
So what I tell kids, right, like, we wear uniforms, say Faith Lutheran Academy, on their chest. And like, when you guys go out in public, if you're disrespecting your mom and dad at the grocery store or whatever, people are gonna see your logo
mm,
and they're gonna be like, those kids of Faith, like, that's how they act. And I was like, more so though, they're gonna be like, that's how a Christian acts.
mm,
And so I think it's really important, and it goes back to what I was taught, faith, family, job, baseball.
mm,
Everything you do, you can put in a way that would be pleasing to God.
mm.
How you carry yourself, how you interact with people, how you deal with challenges. You know, there is so many things, especially today, I would say people are down to complain about. There's so
Mm,
many things. But you know what? Like, we have an opportunity, and this is where I feel this is why I love being at Faith, is because I had so many great teachers and coaches through my
mm,
time at Faith that truly shaped me to be who I am.
mm,
You know, I want to be able to be that person for someone else. And, you know, learning through Faith, because, little backstory, I went to Faith. Well, I had three middle schools that I was going to go to, and then Faith was the one that I really wanted to go to, and somehow I got in.
mm.
And my mom grew up in Utah, so she was
Okay,
raised Mormon, and my
okay,
father moved all over the place. Pretty much stayed, was most of his life here in Las Vegas, but he was raised Catholic.
okay.
And then there was me, so I kind of was just like, I know I'm just here, and um, I got a Bible the
Mm,
first day at Faith. I didn't know I didn't know what a book of the Bible was. I didn't know what the numbers meant. I didn't know
yeah,
any of that.
yeah.
And it wasn't a thing of like my parents didn't want me to. They wanted me to figure out what I was,
Mm,
what I believed in
mm,
on my own. And so anyways, looking back, I don't feel like I was like, I need to be this way. I don't
mm,
feel like that's how I was. I need to be a Christian. I need to do this. This is how I need to act. I think it was just the people I was surrounded by and
mm,
seeing how they acted. There's one common theme. And there's Jesus Christ was
Mm,
their savior,
mm,
and it's like, wow, that's all it takes. I don't need to go crazy. I don't need to hold a big thing out in front of the stadiums and yell and all. It's like that little simple thing of, actions speak louder than words. It's like, I don't think I could come up with a more perfect example of seeing how that 7 years at Faith couldn't have helped make me who I am more so than it did.
mm,
It's easy to be a Christian when you're on
mm.
Faith's campus, right? There's
Yeah.
religion, there's chapel, there's Bibles all over the place, there's crosses. It's easy, right?
Mhm.
And then you go out into the real world, okay, right? You're not just going to be like, all right, let me look in the Bible for what I need to do right here. It's like, okay, I learned all these things. I learned how Jesus responded to these. I learned, what God expects you to do, and it's like, okay, that's what I need to do. I mean, I'll
Mm,
never forget my first English class in Portland, Oregon. Okay, that's all we need to know, right? In Portland, Oregon, they had, as part of our required text, was the Bible. And I
mm,
remember sitting there like, how is that gonna happen? Like,
mm,
I'm in a liberal arts college
mm,
and we're gonna read the Bible. And I remember going in, and I kid you not, this kid was wearing a black, everything was black. He had
mm,
all black, and he had an upside down cross on his shirt.
mm, mm,
And I remember just being like, wow,
mm,
this might be the most interesting class of all time. And it was just eye opening to me, because I'm like, I'm not on Faith anymore, right?
mm,
That stuff exists out in the real
mhm,
world. And again, it's not like I was like, I need to, put on my Christian suit and be a Christian. It's just like, no, like, I was raised by parents that let me make those choices, and they supported it, and they sent me to a school that had Christ at the center of everything they did.
mm,
And so, to answer your question, I feel like I don't sit and think about it. It's just kind of who I have become
mm,
as a person, more
mm,
so, and it's like, it, I'm not perfect.
mm.
I slip up with things, it happens.
Yeah.
But just knowing, like, okay, I know my priorities in life. I know I have, Christ at the center of my heart. I might not sit and speak to everybody about it all the time,
Mm,
and it doesn't have to always be, you see somebody that's struggling, ask them for help. you
mm,
know you see someone that's struggling to walk up to the door, hold it a little bit longer,
mm,
and see, doing those little things, I truly feel like can be the spark that somebody might need. If I'm wearing my Faith shirt and people see me
mm,
hold the door, or I have my badge on, or whatever,
mm.
you know, you, it's not like teaching when I'm like, all right, like, now I'm home, I can just be Mike. Like, you're a Christian either all the time or none of the time. Like, there's
Yeah,
you don't get to pick and choose.
for sure.
And I think that's what people struggle with sometimes. And
Mm,
again, you don't have to be in your face about it. You don't have
mm,
to sit and yes, there is a time for that. There is a
mm,
time when people maybe need to hear that. I would say I'm not the best at doing that. I just am
mm,
like, you know what? This is who I am. This is how I grew up. This is what I was taught,
mm,
and try to be a reflection of that
mm.
in my everyday life. So
I love that answer in so many different ways. It resonates a lot with me. I have similar approaches with a lot of those things. I really believe that actions do speak louder than words, and I just if I you know I it's in the Bible it just talks about how not to judge either, right? And we don't know other people's walks of life, and it can be equally as valuable to just show people, by our actions and it just being like, hey, you need to repent. Which to everybody that goes and does those things, if God's calling you to do that, I commend you for doing that. Like that is awesome.
I couldn't do that.
Yeah, like
you
I
know,
couldn't
if that's
personally,
what
but
it's like, yeah.
if that's what God's put on your heart, like good for you, and I'm thankful you're doing the Lord's work, and that's amazing. But I think everybody, I know for me, sometimes like I would wrestle with like, am I doing enough? Like, am I because I'm not going around, people be like, "Hey, you need to, accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior." Like, if I wasn't doing that every day, and I would. There was a season of my life where I felt convicted, like, "Oh, am I doing enough?" But then God gave me this peace that, by like I've been doing lately, like by creating these videos and by creating this podcast and just by helping out at my church, like you're doing what you're being called to do. Like you don't have to be one of those people that, like I said, have other callings. And so, to all the people that are early on in the faith, or maybe no matter where you're at in your faith, is just realize that whatever God's calling you to do, like, it looks different for everybody. It's not greater and it's not smaller. It's what He's called you to do. And so I think that's something that's really important for everybody listening to, that if you're the one that's supposed to go quizzing people for the Bible, then that's what you're called to do. If
Yeah.
you're one that's just supposed to be a bagger at the grocery store that wears a Christian shirt, but people don't know it, but you're the biggest Christian out there, and you might not even say a word. You might be so introverted that you don't talk, but people can still see Jesus through you because you got that shirt on or whatever. So I think that's really important. So let's talk a little bit about life can get hectic sometimes. A lot of things going on. You coach, you're married, you congratulations, you just bought a new house.
Yeah.
That's amazing. A lot of these different things going on. What are some practices maybe in your life that help you keep Jesus at the center of maybe your relationship as well as your personal life, like yourself and
Yeah.
teaching and coaching? How do you keep it all together with Jesus at the center?
Yeah, well, I not to keep copping out, but I really focus on, faith, family, and my job in baseball. I think it's important, no matter how much you have going on, um, to figure out what works for me. At
Mm,
the end of the day, it's okay if you're not, the person that's being okay. I gotta make sure I do this, in terms of Christianity, or I'm in big trouble this week, right? Like,
mm,
you know, I'll tell you this: I start and end every single day with prayer.
mhm.
Um, every single night, I say the same prayer in my head. I don't,
Me too.
don't sit and get on my knees and pray and all that. It's just in my head. I say, "Thank you, God, for another day, and thank you for all the blessings that you've given me, and I love you." And that's it.
Mm,
And I think for me there's times, today is a rare day when I get to come home straight from work and just kind of relax. And it's nice, to be able to just chill. But like, I love the days where it's like yesterday, we're at work by 7 a.m., teach till 3:30. And then I go straight to the cages till 8, 9 o'clock, sometimes doing practice. And it's like that prayer at the end of the day, especially at the end of the day, is, to me, that's like, hey, I'm really blessed,
mm,
and today was a great day, and
mm,
I know that I am in a position where it's like I've been able to speak my mind about what I felt today, and that's just my general one. Sometimes, there's like, oh, today kind of sucked. Like, what's up, man? So that's a big one. I think for me, in terms of how, me and Meg work, it's hard. Sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, I am not perfect, and I do not go to church every single Sunday, especially when we've got a 8 a.m. game and a tournament weekend. It makes it really, really tough,
mm,
and it's okay, right? Like, I try to
mm,
tell people, like, that's okay.
mm,
It's not something that you should get in the habit of doing, right?
mm.
Oh, I could take 10 minutes. I'm going to sleep. I'm going to go to the later service.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying that. We make it a point to try to get to church when we don't have those things, or even just watch online. Like, honestly, there's
Mm,
no excuse to not have some type of service. I'm
absolutely.
very fortunate that, we get to do chapel at school
Mm,
every single Wednesday. And, so fifth graders lead chapel. And so actually right now, this trimester, my class leads chapel every single Wednesday. So
wow.
yeah, so I'm pretty involved with that every day. So it's like, not trying to shortcut anything, but I'm like, okay, at least I was at chapel. Right. And I love chapel, and I like, it doesn't seem like a burden. I
Mm,
love being able to go, but, you know, a big one for me too. Like, I know everybody's got one of these.
yeah.
There's more than enough apps. I get a Bible verse every day.
Yep.
It pops up. I wake up usually between 4 and 5 every day,
Oh
so I
my
can
goodness.
set, like, rise and grind, man. Get so
4
much.
and 8? Oh my goodness.
5, yeah, every day between 4 and 5. But then, but I have so much stuff going on after school. It's like I need to get things done in the morning,
Mm,
And so I get Bible verses on my phone every morning. Just one. It's just a simple. You look at the Bible app. Super
yep.
easy. You can set what time it comes, and that's just a constant thing. And it's like, again, those aren't giant things, No,
Mm,
Meg and I don't volunteer at our church. We go to the crossing. It's super laid back. Their theme, I love it, is "Come as you are."
mm,
That's literally on the side of the building from
amen.
every single angle, and it's like, that's what works for us. And I think
Mm,
that's such a big thing for people. is it's like, find what works for you. You
Mm,
know, maybe you can't go to church. Maybe your
mm,
job doesn't allow you to go to church. Okay, watch it online.
mhm,
Have a Bible app.
mm.
I mean, those are things that there's never an excuse.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be a certain way. There are,
Mm,
that is what is so amazing about Christianity. And I mean, you can do it however you want. As long as
mm,
you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, He died on the cross and rose again, you're good. Now that doesn't mean you can act a fool. I teach that to the fifth graders, right? We talk about forgiveness and
mm.
grace, right? You don't get to flick your sister in the ear and then be like, sorry, God. And then, and have them forget. No, because then again, it goes back to you're not reflecting
Mm,
Christ in your actions,
mhm.
and so anyways, it's just finding what works for you. And, it is pretty cool that, Meg and I do get to go to school together and be at a
Yeah.
Christian school and be able to have those conversations. I feel like I have been in a position over the last 10 years. No, maybe not 10, probably just since Meg and I have been together, even with just my family of like, they go to church,
Mm.
when we go and, ask questions and trying to teach my niece and nephew about stuff. They don't go to faith. Hopefully Kaylee goes next year.
There
That's
you go.
She applied to get in, and they want her to have a Christian education. And
Mm.
so it's like being able to share those experiences and answer questions, and just Christmas, explain how
For
that
sure.
what that stuff is. And Kaylee's like, oh, is it bad about talk about Santa? Well, no, but don't lose sight of what it's about. And
Mm,
so, just being able again to have everything I try to do be a reflection of what I believe,
mm,
because I feel like there's I don't know how to say this. Like, I feel like one of the reasons people get so turned away by Christianity or any religion, honestly,
mm,
anything, is when people are hypocritical about it.
mm,
you know, do we all mess up? Yeah. Do we all do dumb stuff at some point in our life? Yeah. Do we
mm,
all, you could make a laundry list of the things that we mess up on, but it's okay.
mm,
And it's okay in the sense that, I mean, you're not going to be the perfect person with whatever it is you decide to do.
mm,
But as long as you can accept that you're trying to do the right thing, and that,
mm,
it's okay.
mm,
Like, just don't lose sight of what you're supposed to be doing. Don't lose sight of what the main focus is. You know, yeah. Do I, and I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good example. It's like, do I say a bad word every now and then? Yeah, I do. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not perfect. It's okay though. I don't make it a habit. I try not
mm,
to. Try to be better. But I feel like people are like, oh well, it's hypocritical, or like I said with the
mm,
church thing, like, yeah, I work at a Christian school, and yes, I try to go to church. I do. Do I go every weekend? No. I'm going to be honest, right? But it shouldn't turn people away because they
mm,
can't do what society thinks you have to do.
mm,
No, I don't sit and read the Bible every single day. If you do, great. That's not something that I do. And
mm,
so I think it's just people being able to understand, like, it doesn't take a lot to
mm,
be a good Christian, to be a good
mm,
person. It doesn't. Have
mm,
Christ at the center of what you do. Try your best. There you go.
mm.
So it's kind
I,
of how I try to live my life. So
I love, a lot of things from that. And I think a couple of the biggest things is one, like you said, there's no excuse to not being able to see God anymore. Now with resources like your phone, having the Bible app. To anybody listening, Bible app, YouVersion Bible app's incredible. Use it all the time. They have amazing devotionals. So with anything, they do Bible verses every day. They just do regular devotionals. You can watch. A lot of churches now have their services online, like you said, the Crossing, Central Church. A lot of really great churches around, Life Church or Elevation Church. Some
I know our
really,
school, Faith
yeah,
Community Lutheran Church, they stream all their services. They have Saturday night and Sunday. So
exactly. And I mean, their resources are out there, and I think, I call it a faith journey, right? It's called a faith journey, and I think people are, at different phases of their lives and journey, and I'm personally in a season of my life where I'm being called to take my faith to the next level. And I don't think everybody's necessarily called to take it to the next level or are at that point yet in their lives. But for me, it's like I'm at that point where I am spending time every day in the Word. I am doing praise and worship. I am getting heavily involved in my church because that's where I'm feeling led to do and feeling led. But that's okay if you're not there yet, and or if that's not exactly where God has you. But I think praying just to ask God, what is your will for my life? And I think that's what you've done on early on in your life or earlier, right? Because now you're teaching and you feel
Yeah.
at peace and God's made that clear, that's where you're meant to be, then you're in God's will for your life, it sounds. And so for all the people maybe that aren't there yet, it's not that he's saying he's doesn't do, all the other things that other Christians does or whatever. It's he's, living the God's will for his life and he is doing things with his school, right? That has chapel and he's still able to, watch, church online. He still reads the Bible app. He prays, every day. Those things, like he said, are enough. And I think that, like he said, sometimes we spend a little bit too much time as Christians or followers of anything to judging and being hypocrites of other things. And so, um, but to all the people that are judges, I get it. I was listening to someone say it like this, like, if you truly believe the word as much as you say you do, then I can understand. Like, if you, and I get this because it's where I'm at too. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe that you have to, accept him as your Lord and Savior to go to heaven. And when you have loved ones that aren't there yet, or you have people in your life that you're around that haven't, like that's a scary thing. And I think that's, a difficult thing for me to swallow, right? So I can understand where people are like, there's people around me that aren't there yet, so I wanna go tell them the good news because I wanna see them in heaven. I wanna see them, not have to bear the sins of the world because Jesus already did that for us. So, I definitely see that side of it. So to all the listeners that, I think it's a controversial topic in my opinion. So
It's
I
like
just really
talking
wanted.
about money.
What?
It's like talking about money.
It is.
Well,
It is. But at the end of the day, the two things I want to follow up with here, with the last thing, or last two things, would be, you know, the cool thing of baseball wise. I'm gonna shift back into baseball a little bit. We connected early on, baseball wise, because we're both catching guys, right?
yeah.
You caught in college growing up. And my brother Grant, older than me, caught growing up, so I instantly glommed on to catching. And we really, bonded over that as well. I know Meg growing up, every person she loved was a catcher. I mean, she was the biggest like Jared Saltalamacchia fan. She was the biggest,
She loves
Veritek.
tech, yeah.
Yes, Veritek. She loved all those guys, growing up, so I think that's really fascinating. So talk a little bit about catching now, because I have a lot of listeners probably that are catching guys, because
Yeah.
that's my family, my fraternity. So let's talk a little bit about developing a youth catcher real quick. What are some big takeaways that if you're working with a kid, because you're 9U, right, or 8 9U? If you
90.
got a 9U catcher, what are you what is your focus with that kid, and how are you gonna help him get there?
Yeah. Yeah. So catching's been my thing for, well, I think I caught the first time in my life and I sucked at it and I hated it. I want to say I was 10 or 11. I think I was right around 11. So, over 20 years, just loving catching. I think that the number one thing that you have to understand as a catcher and even as a coach, for anybody that is coaching or wants to get into coaching, is your catcher is not a backstop. You look at catchers today, and I get a lot of people, they're like, well, you can't compare them to big leaguers, and not like, no, but like, let's be realistic. That's where a lot of people want to get, and they're the
Yep.
best at what they do. So let's see how we can try.
Mm.
Yes, for a 9-year-old, it's going to look different, but we can learn and try to adapt to that.
Yep.
Um, number one, like, don't be ashamed if you're athletic and you want to catch.
Mm.
There is a big misconception for a long time of like, your catcher's your big, fat, slow guy
No,
that just sits
they're
there.
middles with gear on nowadays.
Yeah, it's like, so, number one thing, regardless, is you need to be fantastic at receiving. That
Yep.
is your number one
100%.
job. There's so many showcases and this and colleges that look at, your pop times and how hard do you throw. That is a great tool to add to your catching arsenal. That is not what
Yep.
catching is about. As you get older, catching, you're not worried about whether or not you can have a 1-9 pop time, because if you've got a lefty on the mound that doesn't pay any attention to the base runners, you could have a bazooka on your arm and you're not throwing them out. And so that's a
1000%.
that's one thing is I tell people your catching job: catch, block, throw. Those are the things that you need to focus on. When I work with kids, whether it's practice, we try to incorporate practice time for catching. If it's a lesson, I don't care how long, at least half of that time is going to be devoted to receiving. It gets
Yep.
boring, it gets old, they don't like it, but that is a game changer if you can catch the ball and present it to the umpire in a way that's going to help your pitcher.
100%.
No, you're not going to get the glory. The pitcher's going to get all the glory, but that's not your job.
Yeah.
Your job
Yep.
is to make the pitcher look good.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say number one, spend time receiving. There's no wrong receiving thing, honestly. Get used to catching the ball. Whatever it is, tennis balls, ping pong, however you want to approach it,
Yeah.
bare hand, training gloves, just practice catching. I had a coach in college that was he got drafted by the Marlins. I don't know how high up he got. I know he didn't make it to the bigs, but he was involved with the catching organization or catching part of the organization. And when I got to college, I remember we had 4 catchers at the time, my freshman year, and he was like, what are your guys' approaches to receiving? And when I was catching, it was get your thumb under, get your thumb under.
Yep.
Now it's we're working through the ball, and
Yeah.
that's really big. And I remember he was just like, okay, and he was just like taking in, but you could tell he like knew what he was going to say already.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I learned when I was with the Marlins? And we're all like expecting this groundbreaking like
Catch the
catching
ball.
thing. He's like, just catch the ball. Literally, just catch the ball.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, right? Like your job is to, the greatest catcher ever, Yachty. That's not even a topic. I don't want to get into that with anybody. He's the greatest catcher ever. He talked about just presenting the ball to the umpire. How can I show the umpire that was a good pitch? Okay. So that's a really big thing for me. I will say too, I hate the word frame. I hate that word. It has a horrible, people don't know what it truly means. You go watch, I see it a lot with the younger kids, and it's not to any fault of their own. They're trying to do something they've seen on TV, right? But pulling the ball and doing all this, like what I tell people is like, all you're doing is you're telling the umpire you think he's an idiot, and you can get that pitch called for a strike that was 2 feet over the batter's head, right? So less is more. But if you're starting, just practice catching, feel the ball, know where you need to be. Yes, there's lots of technicalities, that we could get into with your stance, your position, and this and that. But at the end of the day, like, get used to catching the baseball. Be comfortable catching the baseball. So that's the biggest thing. And that's and we're very fortunate. Our 9U team, we've got 4 catchers, and we're comfortable. And ironically enough, where do you think 2 of them play?
In the middle infield.
They play middle infield. And that's the progression that catching is really going.
Yep.
I was not that athletic. I have guys when I was doing high school where it's like, hey, we want to work on our footwork, go turn double plays.
Yep.
There's lots of stuff that people don't do. I know when I was catching in high school, if I put my knee down like guys do now,
get ripped. You get yelled at.
Yeah.
The brain all the time.
Yeah, and it's not saying it's wrong. It was wrong. It's just things have changed a lot. The game itself at all ages. I look at the 9U team I coach now. I'm like, I never even would have made the team. I would have been on the other end where the teams we're beating, we're destroying. I would have been the kid on the other team, and it's like, but the game is just moving so fast now at all ages, and even in the bigs, like the game moves so fast. Like, yes, it's the same game, 9 to the bigs, whatever, right? The game of baseball, there's little rules here and there, but like the pace, the speed, guys throwing harder, they're faster, they hit balls harder. It's like you have to be able, to keep up with that at every position, So don't just stick that kid back there. You think that's just going to soak in the baseball all the time and not be able to move. Like, they've got the most important job, and I truly believe it's the hardest job on the baseball field. That's just physically, mentally, and in terms of a responsibility standpoint, like, it's not even a question, right? Yeah, it's not even a question. But there's just that's what makes it fun. That's why I loved it so much.
Yeah.
I loved all that responsibility. I loved the technicalities. I loved, I
Mm.
was just talking to a kid I work with. He's 11. I was like, hey, do you ever introduce yourself to the umpire? I don't even know why I thought of it. I just asked him. He was like, no.
Oh.
I was like, but no one's taught him that, right? Those are not
Mm.
things that people, I was like,
Think about.
he's like, why not? He's like, I don't know. I was like, next game you have, take your mask off. Hey, sir, how's it going? Don't call him Blue. They don't like being called
No.
colors.
Nope.
Call them sir. You learn their name, you say it. I was like, and you know what that's going to do is that, you protect him, you work hard.
Yep.
That's going to help you in the batter's box.
Mm.
I can't tell you, Jesse. You remember Jesse? He
Yep.
umpired high school baseball forever. Do you
Mm.
know how many times I didn't strike out on pitches that were probably strike 3, but I took care of Jesse. I did
Mm.
let him get hit. I blocked the ball. I was respectful. It's like that, again, approaching things the right way, doing
For
things
sure.
the right way, it pays off. But man,
Mm.
I didn't strike out so many times in high school because like I took care of the umpire,
For sure.
and it's like that part's huge, there's a lot that goes into catching. It's a lot more than people think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You touched up on a lot of great stuff there. To wrap this thing up, I think, to be a coach and to be an athlete, we got to be willing to evolve. We got to be willing to grow. One of my biggest mentors, Jerry Weinstein. He's one of the biggest catching guys known to man. Um, but one thing I love about him, and he's a dear friend of mine, is he's grown with the game. The dude is 81 years old and has been in baseball for 60 years, been in professional baseball for 40 years, and is adapting to continue to want to learn, and has went from guys catching the ball basically with two hands, when he first started, to now we're on one knee to working through the baseball, all these things. And not once was he at first he probably was like, okay, I want to figure this out before I start promoting it. But at the end of the day, he didn't, have hangups. Like he was like, I gotta grow, I gotta adapt, see why these young bucks are teaching this and these types of things. And so to anybody listening, like, don't be turned off when you hear something that you're not comfortable with yet. Just, adapt, learn, reach out to people that might know a little more than you, and that's okay. Don't be ashamed of reaching out to someone who maybe has a little more experience and those types of things. Like I've talked to so many catching guys. I've talked to Mike. I've talked to other people, and just being like, "Hey, I don't know much about this area," or "Hey, vice versa." People call me, say, "I don't know much about this. Can you enlighten me, or can we talk about this?" Because if you truly want to help your players as best you can, you need to take your own pride and ego out of the equation and be like, I just need to get the best information and learn the best abilities and coach these guys to the best of my abilities with the most accurate information. And sometimes that takes away, or takes you taking yourself out of the equation and
Yeah.
putting your players in the best position to win. And so, last two questions. Talk about on the catching topic. Do you teach any of your kids one knee down? Is it, are you whatever they feel comfortable with? What's your style on that?
Well, to piggyback off adapting, like, yeah, it's something I've had to learn about,
Mm.
and try to see. I do think I'm going to go to the second part first about being comfortable.
Mm.
That is the number one thing I think with catching is you have to be comfortable.
Mm.
It's hard enough. If you're not comfortable, you're not going to be successful.
Mm.
And I think that is that is applicable to so many parts of catching. Your
Mm.
stance, how you receive, how you throw, how you're approaching your blocking. You have to be in a position that you can succeed, and usually that means you're comfortable with it.
Yeah, and all three of those.
Yeah, in any part of it, right? And so
Yep.
I think for me, I've had to learn how to approach, something I didn't do, right? Like I said, I
Mm.
never, ever, ever thought of doing that. If anything, I
Mm.
slid my leg out because I thought it looked cool like Yachty, and then that was about it.
Kickstand. Yep.
There was no real reason.
Mm.
Honestly, I didn't have a reason for it other than like it was kind of comfortable sometimes, and it looked
For
cool.
sure.
Like that's not, So you know, being someone that works with the younger guys right now, I think, and this is for anyone that wants to try to get to that position,
Mm.
because I do think it has a ton of benefits. I think a lot of it, though, is you have to have the foundation of I can get into a primary stance. I can
Mm.
sit there. I tell kids, you should be in a primary stance. It's probably not going to look like mine did, but you should be able to sit there for 10 minutes and watch TV and have no
Mm,
issues. You can't get to that stance. We're not even going to worry about one knee because that means,
mm,
to me, that means you don't have enough body control to be able
mm,
to do the other parts because it looks less, right? Like
mm,
being down on one knee looks less.
mm,
It requires so much more activeness, if that's
mm,
even the right word, right? You have physicality, right? You
mm,
have to be able to move a lot more. You have to be faster. You have to be stronger, So the same kid actually that I was talking about with the umpire, I mentioned, we were working on his throwing yesterday, and I was like, "Hey, have you ever tried catching from a knee?" He's almost 12 now. He's a
mhm,
physical kid, and he's like, "No." And I was like, "Okay, I want to start like, next time we work, I want to start introducing it.
mhm,
I think it's important. I really do. I know colleges now. There are tons of colleges, honestly, that's what they teach. That's what you have to do. You have to figure out how to do it.
mm.
Um, Organizations do that.
Yep,
It looks different, but that's how you're going to catch for them,
for sure.
or you're not going to catch for them, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what it is. So I think like for me being working with so many younger kids right now,
Mhm,
not a lot, but I want them to know that like it's okay to do that. And yeah, you can do what you see that guy on TV do. Not yet,
mm,
but we can learn about how to approach it because
mm.
you can do right. People's argument is, so you can't block successfully from it. You can't throw guys out. And it's like, no, you can.
You
It
can.
looks way different than how you might teach,
Yep,
10, 15 years ago, but it can be done and it can be done very
absolutely.
successful. So it's just about making sure, again, I just go back to like teaching the kids, are you comfortable? Are you comfortable?
Mm,
Are you comfortable? Yes, there's certain things with receiving, I believe you have to do. Yeah, you have to
mhm,
throw, get in a certain spots, but they have to be comfortable.
for sure.
They're going to get eaten up back there. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. No, that's incredible. And I, there's some things that I love that you mentioned there, and I go, like my catching style is like you have to be comfortable, you have to be able to be adaptable, you have to be able to be mobile, right? When I mean adaptable, you have to be able to, if I'm in a stance, you got to be able to receive a pitch that when a pitcher misses by 12 inches, or
no,
or things like that. So you have to make sure your pre-pitch movement and your stance allows you to be adaptable, right? With your movements. And then another thing too is mobility. You have to be able to move. If you can't move, then you're not in the right position, regardless if you're traditional or one knee down.
right.
And
That's why I love when I see kids. That's why I love when I see kids. It's like doing the showcase thing where they're like turned like this, like
yeah,
I'm ready to receive. And I
yep,
say, okay. I was like, so let me ask you this: how are you going to block this pitch? And they're like, I'm like, again, now our priorities for catching, receive, block,
yeah,
throw. Now we're going like this, and
yep,
you're not going to work. It's not going to
hmm, for
And so
sure,
but you have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to make those adjustments, pitcher to pitcher, right?
yep,
As you get older and you start developing a relationship with pitchers,
hmm,
number one, you have to know what that guy's strengths are. I
yep,
had a guy in college that's like, when he was missing, I knew I had to angle my body just a little bit. Whether or not he knew, I don't know. But to me, I knew I could close this off a little bit and be able to get in the zone a little bit.
yeah,
He wasn't missing as much.
uh,
You have to be able to do that stuff. And it's hard, for my age kids because they
yeah,
haven't
for sure,
experienced that enough. But it's like you want to keep catching. You want to be, look at Greg Maddox's catcher.
yep,
I don't even remember his name. The guy caught literally had a job always, right? As long as Greg Maddox was in the league, he had a job because he was able to do the things that Greg wanted him to do. He was able
yes,
to do the things that he felt made him successful. And it's
mm,
like that is your job as a catcher.
for sure.
That is your job.
And I love that. I think that's amazing. And I'm a one knee guy. I teach a lot of my guys. I'm a guy that I like to. I find a stance that we can do all three of them in that they feel comfortable with, and we just try to master that.
Yeah.
I'm not huge into teaching a couple guys will have maybe two or three stances, but I see a bunch of kids and I see it all the time, and it drives me nuts. They'll teach them like seven different stances. They'll kickstand, left knee, right knee, with super hunched over chest, to sitting straight up on the high pitch. All that's gravy, but I would recommend find one, maybe two stances and just try to perfect those as best you can. Like
Yeah.
my guys, I caught a lot of guys, I worked with a lot of guys who were left knee primary, with runners not on, and then would go right knee with runners on. And I'm a big right knee guy because I think it's easier to throw out of. So I teach a lot of my guys that way. But I appreciate you giving me your thoughts on catching. This was awesome.
Yeah.
To all the listeners, I'm gonna be actually working with Mike and a couple of his guys that he knows, and we're gonna kind of do like a little drill series type of thing. We're gonna kind of work together on, so you guys can kind of see my thoughts on catching, see what Mike's thoughts are on catching, and we can just have a great conversation. And obviously, the best for the kids is being able to showcase their talents at their young ages, and to maybe some college coaches that are watching or whatever. When they get older, there you go, some kids to look out for. But appreciate you tuning in, Mike. I always like to end these with a prayer.
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of end this with a prayer here, and look forward to connecting again soon.
Right on.
All right, sweet. So, dear Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for bringing us together, and I thank you for our family, Lord, and I thank you for all the listeners that they're taking time out of their day to be able to join us and listen and hear our insights. And at the end of the day, God, we just want to bring all the glory and honor to you, Lord. If we could just bring one person to be at peace with whatever they're going with right now, God, that you just pray that our listeners understand that you are with them through this season of their life, that you are the God of impossible, and you will make things happen, God, because we know that is what you're capable of doing. And I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for Mike and his relationship and our family, and I appreciate that he is, taking care of my sister and all those different things. God, I'm just so thankful for this, and it's in Jesus' holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you tuning in, and I'm sure I'll see you soon.
Awesome. Sounds good, buddy. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.